Hi everyone, welcome to MedTech Mondays. Thank you for joining us. Still a few more people coming online as we speak, but I thought I'd just make a start and just thank everyone for joining us. We've got a great panel today, all from very complementary groups to what the Medical Device Partnering Programme do. We thought this would be really useful just to give you a bit of an oversight on, particularly as a startup. Firstly, there's lots of programs, lots of potential avenues to follow, and just trying to really make sure everyone understands the best pathways or best people to get in contact with, the best ways to get some advice to help you progress, particularly in those early stages. So just a reminder, if anyone wants to submit questions throughout the session, you can do that using the Q&A box at the bottom. You should be able to see all the questions that have been asked, and you should be able to upvote the ones that you like. So if you do see a question that you would also like answered, remember to upvote that, because we'll prioritize those upvoted questions and make sure that they get answered. We'll aim to answer all the questions that come through. If there's lots of questions, some of those might have to be a follow-up afterwards. You'll also have the contact details for all of our speakers today. So if there's anything you don't get a chance to ask today, you'll be able to follow up with people individually after the presentation. So just quickly, so my name's Stephen. I'm the Innovations Manager here at the Medical Device Partnering Programme. And really, and I should perhaps say my background. So I've worked in medical devices as a mechanical design engineer previously, on a range of devices, from deep brain stimulation to devices for laparoscopic surgery to ophthalmic devices. My role here at the Medical Device Partnering Programme is when new inquiries come through, I do that commercial and technical early stage assessment and help to coach people through our application process. So I'll do a very short presentation before we introduce the panel, and I'll just talk through really what the Medical Device Partnering Programme does, and then we'll also have the other groups, and they'll talk in very briefly about what their individual programs do. And it's probably a little bit different to some of the other presentations we've done, in that we're all very complementary. We're all sort of doing similar things, but we're in different pockets of that early stage help. So I guess just to start with, I just wanted to show our vision, which is we want Australia to be the fastest in the world at taking a medical device idea and turning it into a product in the market. I'm sure all of our other groups would agree that this would be a fantastic outcome for Australia if all of us working together are able to achieve that. So here are a few things that we do at the MDPP Ideas Incubator to help people develop their ideas. One thing we hear a lot of is people saying we need money, and we like to sort of challenge this idea and say, well, why do you need money? Is it because you need access to expertise, which is often what people really need? And sometimes money isn't the right way to access the right expertise. Sometimes you need facilitated connections, relationships, and access to the right experts to save you time in the long term, instead of throwing all your money into one opportunity. You sort of make sure you're really assessing that early and upfront. So MDPP, our Ideas Incubator, what we offer is 250 hours of product development and a 30-hour market report in return for a cash contribution of $5,000. Our IP policy is simple in that we don't keep any of the IP that's generated, so everything belongs to the applicant. We offer lots of partner advice, lots of future funding opportunities, and we'll connect you in with any other complementary groups like the ones we're talking today that we think give everyone the best chance of success after finishing with our program. The program's competitive, so we do have more than 100 applications a year. This is a quick diagram that sort of talks through our application process. One thing that we do that is open to anyone who sort of makes it through our early screening phase is a workshop. This is where we get a whole bunch of technical experts. It could be patent attorneys, it could be regulatory consultants, or manufacturers, clinicians, any individuals that we think can offer and contribute to the development of that product. And also something that often people don't think about up front, which we think is really, really important, to make sure you get those clinicians involved. Ultimately, we have a panel that decides which projects get through. And then we'll run those 250-hour projects. So that's all very, very brief from me on the MDPP. I think most of you will have been to one of these presentations before, so hopefully you have a good idea of our program. As I mentioned today, the theme is Startup 101, so talking to other organizations involved in the medtech startup ecosystem. So I'm just going to start with Dharmica. If you can turn your camera and your audio on, Dharmica. Thanks. So I've just got 5 minutes. I've got a little countdown timer on there, but feel free to use as much or little as the time as you like. But just to talk through what Cicada do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm head of MedTech at Cicada Innovations, and we're basically Australia's pioneer deep tech incubator. So that's our focus, and we have a really strong community of people from that space within our building. So we are built to help ideas become businesses and those that really shape the future, because when it comes to deep tech, it's a very long time, and MedTech comes under that umbrella. So over the last 20 years, we've had a really strong track record of commercializing science and technology businesses through our incubator, our programs, and obviously the support of our ecosystem and community. And a lot of the partners here today are those kinds of people that we lean on and work with to make that happen. So essentially, it's all about commercialization with us and trying to get businesses solving those pressing problems. But we are actually agnostic. We work across space, agri-food tech, energy. We have really interesting infrastructure here. So we have labs, a prototyping space. We have our network of mentors and experts and investors who are specific to fields, so we can directly connect people. And then we have our bespoke coaching and growth programs. So our mission is to support people and businesses from commercialization, then scaling up, and then through to hypergrowth. We actually want people to exit our building and outgrow it. That's our purpose. And when it comes to medtech and biotech, we've actually got around 17 companies in our building, and we work right across devices, digital health, therapeutics, and diagnostics. And for for our 20-year history, we have people that reside in the building, but also networks and alum that are outside of this building and well connected across the ecosystem.
Thanks, Dharmica. I realised the timer stopped at 1 minute and 2 seconds, so
sure, I'm done.
You could have carried on talking forever.
All good.
Thanks, Dharmica. So next we've got Michelle from the MedTech Actuator. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, Stephen.
5 minutes, a quick introduction, please, Michelle, on what your role is and what the MedTech Actuator does.
No pressure. So hello, everybody. I'm Michelle Kleynhans. I'm the head of new ventures at the MedTech Actuator. So I guess a little bit about me before I tell you a little bit more about the organisation that I work for. So based in Melbourne, I'm a proud coffee snob, much to the dismay of many of my colleagues. I've got a tech and commercialization background, failed startup founder, and for the last 4.5 years or so, with the MedTech Actuator, I've been very heavily involved in identifying and mentoring early stage medtech, biotech, and health tech startups, and supporting them in their commercialization and fundraising journeys. So enough about me, a little bit more about the MedTech Actuator. So I think, as you'll probably hear from a number of the panelists, and as Stephen and Dharmica have already mentioned, we work quite closely with some amazing people in the space. And I think what you will really notice with this panel session in particular is that we all work well together. We have many teams that go through multiple different programs and get a lot of value from each of them. So I think there's a bit of a theme on sort of collaboration and complementary aspects to a lot of what we do, because look, at the end of the day, we're all here to support aspiring entrepreneurs and move the needle for Australia. So MedTech Actuator itself, founded in 2018, so we're still only a couple of years old. We were founded by serial medtech entrepreneurs and health policy experts. And since our launch a couple of years ago, we have expanded into Asia Pacific with offices in Australia and Singapore. We deliver 2 main programs to support entrepreneurs. So we've got our flagship program, which is our MedTech Actuator program, and that's a pre-seed to Series A accelerator for MedTech, health tech, and biotech startups from across APAC. It's a 15-month venture-backed program, and it prepares companies for market success through intensive mentorship, industry collaboration with many of the people that we have on the call today, initial capital injection of up to $200,000, and of course, capital raising support, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to bring any of these innovations to the market. And that program is primarily for teams that are at the sort of rough and dirty prototype stage, and they have IP and a team in place as well. Then we've also got our MedTech Actuator Origin program, which used to be called MedTech's Got Talent. This program is a lot of fun. It's an early stage pitching and entrepreneurship competition. It allows aspiring entrepreneurs and early stage startups to compete for a share in some non-dilutive cash prizes and fast-tracked entry into our flagship program. Anyone and everyone can apply. We have people from retired dentists through to students, through to industry professionals participating, and that one's a lot of fun. I guess one thing that I just wanted to note as well, because I think medtech, biotech, and health tech, everyone can kind of define these areas slightly differently, but for us, it's more around devices, diagnostics, AI, VR. When it comes to medtech, when it comes to biotech, more on the combination devices side, regenerative medicine, genomics and precision medicine. And then when it comes to health tech, more on the sort of consumer health tech, sensor-based wearables, other consumer medtech, and sort of broader digital health space. But that's enough from me. I see the timer has stopped, so I'll let Intan tell you a little bit more about what she does.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so next we've got Intan from Perth Biodesign.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Stephen. And it's great to hear from Dharmica and Michelle. So everyone, my name is Intan. I'm from Perth Biodesign. I'm the director of Perth Biodesign, also with my colleague. So a little bit about myself. So I've been, I've co-founded a few startups now. I'm in the middle of one chief technology officer for Rex Author. We're actually working with MDPP and Stephen and Sam on getting our project sort of all the scope for works and those types of things. And it's been a fantastic experience. So continuing on that. I'm also the CEO of Survive called Chin Up, who's currently distributing a novel neck support device for people with suffering from neck pain and a few other kind of degenerative conditions. And I'm also in another project that is sort of pre-startup at the moment, where we've been doing a lot of development to develop a non-invasive treatment method for children with otitis media with effusion or glue ear. So that's a little bit about myself. That's kind of my other jobs outside of the Perth Biodesign director. But so for Perth Biodesign, basically our programs actually start before Cicada and MedTech Actuator, and a lot of these kind of incubator programs, we're really kind of taking a ground up approach in terms of educating the potential innovators, people that are interested in getting into developing medical devices, sort of technology, digital health, and all these other healthcare innovation. And we were looking at approaching it from a needs-based innovation, and that's based on the Stanford Biodesign methodology. And so really focusing on what do the customers need? Is there a real need? If there was a real need, how would it fit within the clinical paradigm? And all that when you're actually solution agnostic. So really understanding that part of the need-based sort of need characterization before you're developing the product. And so a lot of kind of alumni from our programs have actually gone to, I think some of them might have gone to Cicada and also MedTech Actuator. I know that one of our alumni is actually in the MedTech Actuator Accelerate program now, Eldon Rostam. So we're kind of before these guys. But really we've also focused on creating a multidisciplinary team in our kind of flagship project program, the MedTech course, which is a 6-month part-time course. We bring together sort of mostly professionals full-time, some students, some professionals from a clinical, engineering, business and science background. So we really focus on the fact that they all bring in their own sort of perspective into a particular problem and being able to create, identify the need. They do a full clinical immersion within a hospital system, identifying lots of needs, and then we give them best practice tools to be able to filter down those needs to make sure that they are a good unmet need that they can be solving, and that there's sort of like a viable market size pathway for it to be able to, I guess, commercialize. Because obviously there's there's lots and lots of really good needs, but sometimes you have to kind of pick the one that's potentially most viable for you to be able to really take through the startup journey that's already super difficult. So in terms of our courses, we have the 6-month part-time MedTech course. We also have a 3-month part-time digital health course. We've also just started a 2-day boot camp, and it's basically trying to compress the 6 months that we do in a 2-day format, which is really difficult, but at least it kind of gives them kind of a taster of what it's like. Do they really want to go into MedTech? Some of them go, oh God, this is really quite difficult. Maybe I should look at, staying in academia or something like that. But it kind of gives them a bit of a taster on that. And we've also now started working with UWA and actually delivering their design unit, the biomedical engineering design unit, to kind of incorporate Biodesign into that unit. So hopefully some of the students that are coming out, the biomedical engineering students, sort of are more equipped with kind of developing innovations. And I think the other thing that I was just going to say is I'm also the director of Biodesign Australia. So Perth Biodesign is connected to Biodesign Australia, which is a network of Biodesign inspired programs. So that includes, there's Biodesign Innovation Melbourne, that's run by Professor David Graydon and Associate Professor Quang Hui. We also have Queensland Biodesign, Adelaide Biodesign, and Sydney Biodesign. And so in each state, we have sort of a network of programs that people can get into. That's it from me. Stephen, you're muted.
Thanks. Sorry. Thanks, Intan. Yeah, I guess so. I was saying, maybe I'll just throw back to Dharmica. I think Michelle and Intan have told us lots about their programs, but maybe just go back to you, Dharmica, and if there's anything you wanted to add about Cicada.
Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about the programs part. The big part for us is at the moment we've just launched a free series online called the Medtech Foundation. Some of you may or may not have seen this. It's basically an online learning resource supported by New South Wales Health. So it really is just all those fundamental things that we're all talking about, how to actually take something from lab to market. And it's got a set of modules, about 6 modules and different lessons that cover things like validation, commercialization, and lean startup theory. And everything's supported with case studies and sort of worksheets and things. And the best part is obviously you can do it anytime, anywhere, and it costs you nothing. So that's kind of cool. And that's very new for us. And we're really excited to be doing that as an online thing. One of the programs that we've got going on at the moment that we've had all year round is something called the Fast Track Incubation Program. So that's literally where we embed someone into our ecosystem for 6 months with one-on-one personalized coaching and mentoring. And that's really just about propelling a company or a technology through to that next stage, whatever that stage may be, because it's not necessarily capital raising for everybody at that particular moment in time. So we surround them with everything that they need, from all the facilities that I talked about earlier, as well as access to the people in our ecosystem. And they're the major programs we've got, but I would encourage people to sort of sign up to our newsletter, because we've got things happening all the time, webinars, workshops, and we've got a lot of things coming in the future, which are not out yet, a lot in the works. So it's something that I'd encourage you to be on the list for, basically. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I'll make sure I'm not muted this time. Just a reminder for everyone, send through your questions on the Q&A box. So you should be able to access that from the bottom of the screen. Maybe just to start, if I can just ask maybe a general question. So what sort of skills or qualities do you think you need to be a founder who turns into a CEO? Because I think we often see, particularly early stage, perhaps a researcher who really understands the technology, but then you've got to sort of turn that into a business. Maybe I'll start. Dharmica, are you happy to
Sure, I can kick it off and then pass it along. I'm sure we've all got something to say on
Yeah.
this one. I guess from my personal experience, having been in that exact position, the first part is that it is about transitioning from a very less technical role into a more communication and decision-making role, which is very different to what you may be used to if you're an expert in a specific field and you've come up with something. So you really do need to be able to communicate to all audiences, because it's about bringing them on the journey when you're in that position. Your biggest thing is going to be sort of selling and raising funds and keeping that business alive. You are now a business person. So it's about managing people and crises and, you know, having self-reflection enough to know when something's not working and to keep on moving on from that. And I think if you're not from a mathematical or financial background, that's a big thing that you need to bring into the role, or at least learn. Having that financial literacy to be able to understand a business and whether it's actually surviving and doing well, and also to communicate with investors is really important.
Michelle, did you have anything to add?
Look, absolutely echo everything that Dharmica has already mentioned. It's one thing to say if you're a researcher or an engineer and you're used to lots of publications and scientific writing, but moving into the startup space, it is really about simple, effective communication. You're marketing yourself and your business, and so the way in which you do this is quite different to perhaps the way that you are used to presenting at conferences and other things like that. I guess the other thing to add is that you need to be extremely persistent and tenacious. This road is long and it's hard. There are a raft of organizations and people that are here to support you along your journey, but it is a long path to market. So I think you need to be really persistent. You need to be tenacious and be really proactive about creating opportunities for yourself as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think just on the point about the presentations, there's something we see a lot of, and I think people are very proud of their technology, but sometimes they spend too long talking about the minute detail of how it works. And actually, it's why you need it is so much more important than really about how the technology works. Intan, did you want to jump in on that one as well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that transition to be able to kind of, I guess, once you're a CEO, you can no longer kind of be in love with the idea that you've created, especially if you're a fan and you've been creating this for a number of years. You really need to, as Dharmica and Michelle said, really take a step back and kind of, okay, is this running as well as it can be? And is there a hard decision that I would have to make? That means that, say, that idea is no longer viable and I would need to pivot. And either change and make that hard decision. And that can be really difficult for a founder CEO to make that decision, because it's obviously something that they've kind of been working on for a long time. And sometimes having kind of an additional sort of team member to be able to kind of reflect with and kind of bounce ideas off, I think can be really important. So, I mean, obviously you often see sort of like co-founders, two people that are in there. Sometimes having that second person can really just kind of test, like, should we really persist with this, or is this kind of, something that we need to let go and move on something? I think that's going to be really important. And I think teamwork is just so important. Often founders have been working on this for either by themselves or just two people. When they're starting to build a business, they have to actually work with lots of different people, lots of different backgrounds, managing investors. They just have to be able to be a little bit more understanding of people's perspectives. That can be challenging when you have like a really technical background. So I think that those two things are probably the only thing I can add to sort of all the advice from Dharmica and Michelle.
Great, thanks. And while you're there, Intan, I thought maybe I'll just go to you for, we've had someone ask, do I have to live in the state for each of the programs? So perhaps for you with Perth Biodesign.
Yeah, that's right. So I think for the programs within each state, we do have mostly face-to-face sort of, programs. So you would have to live in the state. So for Perth Biodesign, a lot of our programs is face-to-face in Perth. But as I said, there is a program in Queensland. Sydney Biodesign also has a program there in Melbourne and Adelaide, but they do tend to be face-to-face. There might be sort of new things happening in the future, but at this stage, you would have to be in each state to go to those programs.
And Dharmica?
Yeah, both of our programs are open to people in any state, actually. I mean, fast track, obviously, if you can be in here, you get the benefits of the building, but it doesn't mean we can't run it virtually if you've got a space already. So it's open to everyone.
Right, and Michelle?
So for us, our programs are open to anyone across APAC. Traditionally, they have been face-to-face programs, but in this new world that we live in, we've got a bit of a hybrid model. So there are obviously a lot of activities that are a lot more beneficial if you attend in person, and we really try and embed our startups within each of the relevant ecosystems. So and long story short, it's a hybrid.
All right. So next question, we'll go for the one at the top. So what stage do I need to be at for each of the programs? So maybe I'll just quickly answer for MDPP. I've sort of elaborated a little bit on the fact that, I mean, we generally speaking, we're happy if a clinician comes in with something sticky taped together, if we can satisfy ourselves that there's a commercial reason for why we should be doing some work on that. So then we can sort of help to do some prototyping. We sometimes get stuck in a bit of a situation that someone comes with a piece of technology that's not very proven and a market that's not very clearly defined. And that's where we sort of struggle to get a project through, which sometimes, and we've had it before. So there's a project that I know has gone through Perth Biodesign and the MedTech Actuator, and then they came to us and they had a prototype, or they were developing a sensor that they had some good data for, and they developed the business model. We'd seen them at the beginning, and they were much better the second time around than when they came back, because they collected together those bits of information. So I think it's always different for every application we get, but it's free to apply. So we're always happy to talk to people. And if they're not quite ready yet, then we'll talk to them in 6, 12, 18 months time. Maybe Dharmica, did you want to go next?
Yeah, that's a similar approach, I guess, for us generally across the things that we do. If you're not the right fit, we will tell you to come back at the right time. But I think for the purpose of the ones we've got, the MedTech Foundation's any stage, you might be refreshing your skills if you're further down the track, or you may be really early and you have no clue what's going on and how to take something into MedTech, and that is completely appropriate for you. The fast track incubation is a little bit different because we'd expect you to have some definition and some IP, obviously, to be able to come in and have a team or business or technology, some traction around all of that, to then sit in and really work hard in, I'd say, an intensive 6 months to hit those goals. So you do need a little bit, you'd be further along. Yeah.
Thanks. And Intan?
Yep. I think for our programs, there's no sort of requirements, and as there's no stage. In fact, we don't, with all our programs, we ask people not to bring in their own intellectual property. So if they have background IP or project that they're working on, we ask them to sort of keep it to themselves, because all the teams that we create, they're all multidisciplinary. They don't know each other at the beginning of the program. And the idea is that they find the clinical unmet need within the program and then create a technology within that kind of sort of 6 month period. But the idea is that from that learning, you can then apply it to any project that you have outside of the course. So yeah, basically anyone that's interested in learning more about kind of that health innovation is open, can come.
Great. And Michelle, sorry, it's always harder to be the last one to answer these questions.
No, all good. So for Origin, which is the really early stage sort of pitching competition, anyone and everyone can apply. The reason that we built the competition was to help, sort of sort of validated idea or proof of concept stage startups, but we have had slightly later stage startups come through the program as well, and really leverage some of the opportunities to open and close fundraising rounds and other valuable things for their projects or for their teams. But then for our flagship accelerator, as there's access to venture capital investment, there needs to be IP, some sort of technical feasibility, and a team behind it to move things forward. Generally, we say, sort of a prototype stage is the best fit, but we assess these on a case-by-case basis because there are so many different aspects that we have to review. So always just encourage anyone to reach out and we can point you in the right direction.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm going to jump around a bit. So just question from Leo. Specifically, he's mentioned MDPP, but I think this is a great question for all of the programs. So asking whether if the IP is owned by a research institution, does that then need to be licensed to a separate company, or can we work directly with research institutions? So just for MDPP, I think on some of the grant programs that we worked on, it can be a good thing if the IP is owned by a research institution, in that that the IP is secure, that someone's going to pay for all of the costs associated with that. So it can be good as long as, so it depends if the research, we will work for the research institution. Typically it'd be a TTO that we'd work with. So we want to make sure that there's some commercial thought. But if it was a company, obviously, if you're exploiting someone else's IP, you need to have the rights to it. So whether that's licensed or however that's going to work. So we want to make sure that you definitely got the rights to the IP. But being owned by a research institution would be a problem for us. Perhaps Michelle, I'll start with you on that one.
Sure. So similar sort of approach for MedTech Actuator Origin. You don't need to have incorporated as an entity. We see a lot of projects coming from universities and hospitals just looking for that sort of kickstart to their journey when it does come to the flagship accelerator. So you don't need to have this locked down to apply, but if you do receive an offer and some investment as well, you will need to set up a company, an investable vehicle. So there will need to be, as Stephen said, exclusive rights for commercialization. So you can actually use that IP and develop it forward. But we work with many teams that have sort of spun out of universities and research institutes, or also startups that continue to partner with those types of organizations moving forward.
Thanks, Michelle. Intan, did you want to add anything to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously per Biodesign we don't take any of the IP, and it's not typically connected. But I think with that, it is a bit of a case by case basis in terms of licensing the project out from a university researchers. Sometimes having that connection can really add to opening up your non-dilutive funding opportunities if you kind of straddle between that. So in the case of Rex Ortho, I'm still a research associate with Curtin University, as well as being the CSO of Rex Ortho, which means that I can access grants that are only industry based, and I can also access grants that are only institute and university based. So there can be definitely sort of advantage in having those two thing. But as you mentioned, Stephen, I think it has to be clear where the IP kind of sits. If there's sort of potential like, it might be difficult to actually exploit that, and that obviously is a bit of a red flag. So as long as that relationship is clear, I don't see a problem with that. Yeah, and when that is, it's bit of a case-by-case basis.
You just reminded me, we've also had projects before where they've left the university too early. There's still lots more research to do, and people can't afford to fund the research to do that. So actually, sometimes we'd rather see that it's still sat with a university and they've not spun out yet. Dharmica, yeah. Anything you wanted to add to that?
Pretty much the same principles apply for us as well. So, if it's going to be licensed out, that's fine, as long as the paperwork's there and you know exactly what you've got the rights to and how you're going to work on it, and you can achieve your goals. Otherwise, we're all investing so much into it, in kind even, and I think that's important to know right up front.
So maybe, Dharmica, I'll throw back to you on the next question. So from Cade, talking about, so you mentioned about upskilling in financial literacy, and any tips that you had on the best ways to upskill for people with scientific backgrounds?
Yeah, I reckon there are about 4 different things I can think of. So you can learn on the job, which it's pretty hard, but you can do it. You might make a few mistakes along the way. That's one. You can actually exploit your mentors and people that you know that have done this and sit down with them and learn if you've got the time and they've got the time. There are a number of programs like the ones we've just been discussing for the last half an hour, which also usually arm you with these skills along the way. So we do teach a lot of that in our commercialization training programs. And so we try to take you through the very basic principles of the things that you need to know in this space that's new to you. And then finally, I guess you could also look at all the universities. Everybody has a short course on financial literacy. So the options are quite broad, if you ask me.
Great, thanks, Dharmica. We'll go to Karen's question now. And I'll just read straight from the question because it's quite a long question. How can an international entrepreneur ensure trust with their clients or investors that the entrepreneur is here to stay long-term and keen to start their journey as an entrepreneur in the Australian medtech industry? So maybe Michelle, you have to answer that one first.
Interesting question. I guess everything in this space is about building relationships. You need to work with people, you need to work within your team, you need to work with various partners and stakeholders as well. And so you do need to build that trust. It's very important because as we've already sort of mentioned, if the tech fails or if you need to pivot, it's the team that's going to do that that's going to move things forward. In terms of, I guess, building that trust and communicating that you're in it for the long haul, I think sometimes what we see with lots of startups when they're pitching their ideas is that they will include exit strategies within their pitches and their documentation, which is completely fair enough because that's what investors are looking for. But I think the way in which you communicate that is extremely important, because if you're sort of showing that, hey, I'm going to develop it to here and then I'm going to leave and it's going to be someone else's problem, that can show sort of, I guess, short-term thinking and that you're not committed for the long haul. So communicating that there are multiple different moments and how you're going to push things forward, I think is extremely important. But I guess other ways that you can signal that you're committed and in it for the long haul, having skin in the game, putting your own money and time and sweat equity and everything like that into it can show that you're committed. If you're an international entrepreneur looking to set up a base in Australia, I guess having partnerships with people in Australia and setting up those types of operations can also communicate that you're committed to growing your business within Australia as well.
Thanks, Michelle. Did anyone else want to add anything to that? No, all good. All right. So we'll go to the next question. So I think we've sort of covered this already. Can I apply to every program or am I allowed to only do one? I think everyone will be in agreement that everyone's welcome to apply to every program, and we would encourage you to make the most of all of the different programs. We're always happy to see that people have been through the others because we know that the quality is so much better when people have gone through them. All right, next so when's the best time to engage with customers? So perhaps Dharmica, you have to sort this one.
Sure, it's basically never too early, even when it's the back of the napkin, as you said earlier, Stephen. I think the earlier the better, even if it's just in your head, because when you create something without engaging anybody in the ecosystem, as we all know, collecting that feedback is super valuable and you risk missing the mark or wasting your time and money, which you probably don't even have in the early days, or just basically not even making it to market at all. So we at Cicada, when we, as I'm sure most programs do, we teach you and arm you with those skills to get the customer discovery done early, and to not just do that in the first instance, keep that going throughout your entire journey, because you're always going to have to make iterations and you're always going to have to be at the forefront of what you're doing. So you're out to solve a problem, you need to solve it properly, and that means speaking to people.
And the last thing you want to do is get to the end of your development and then someone tells you, oh no, you can't do that. It doesn't work in the operating theatre. We don't do it like that, so it wouldn't work.
Exactly. You do not want to make that mistake at all.
Michelle, Intan, anything you wanted to add to that one?
Yes, I mean, I think with the Per Basco, we basically get the innovators to engage with the customers before they create their solution. So even to kind of work out if this is even a good problem to solve, you have to talk to the your stakeholders, and not only say the one surgeon or three surgeons, lots and lots of surgeons, and the physicians and the nurses that are engaged with it, the patients, the payers, the procurement people in the hospital, would they even want something like this? So it's not even just with the customers in the healthcare space. The customers are really complicated, and so many people actually have to make decisions. So I think definitely even, we definitely encourage the students to actually understand all that and engage with the customers before they create, and that becomes a design input almost to create the solution, so that they can actually create something that has the right price point, would fit within an existing workflow, and would be acceptable by people that will be making these decisions for using it and procuring these sort of solutions. So definitely, and as Dharmica said, all the way along throughout your development process, so critical to continuously ask them. And sometimes trends change as well. So some like information that you might find 3 years ago, because obviously MedTech solutions take a long time to get to market. The way that the new guidelines have come out, the way that they're delivering the care slightly different. With digital health coming online, things are changing all the time. So it's so important to continuously engage your stakeholders, not only your sort of end users, but everyone along that kind of continuum of stakeholders.
And Intan, I reckon you've probably, with Rex Ortho, you've probably got the hardest market, because I think orthopedic surgeons, I mean, lots of surgeons are particularly opinionated, but it's getting one or two people, like you can find the opinions you want, but you need to find the general consensus.
Yeah,
Michelle, did you want to add anything? Sorry, Michelle.
Look, just to say, completely agree with everything that's already been said. You want to be you want to develop a solution with the problem in mind, rather than developing a product in search of a solution. And it is extremely important to do it as early as possible. And I think, look, we do it at the MedTech Actuator, and I know that MDPP, Cicada, and Perth Biodesign have this at the sort of forefront of their programs as well. So do it yesterday, essentially.
I think if people don't take anything else out of any of these programs, it's as long as they've spoken to some clinicians and got some feedback, because it's amazing. I was thinking actually that if you knew at the start of your development process that it was going to cost you $50,000 perhaps to get to a proof of concept, if you were putting yourself in the shoes of an investor, you would never put $50,000 into anything without knowing that the customers actually wanted it, because we think in a different mindset. But when it's our baby and we're developing it and we get really excited about it, we throw money at it because we're not really thinking about it in the bigger picture. So maybe we'll go to the next question. So Karen had a follow-up. So for someone still exploring their next big idea, what are the 3 most promising fields or industries within our space that we should consider? So maybe Dharmica, would you like to start with that one?
Have a crack. I don't know about.
Yes.
I'm sure there are lots, and I think we already know sort of data has become really big in healthcare, which it wasn't before. It's become basically the new way of diagnosing and treating and doing those things. So I think that space is always going to be present now and growing. And I actually think, obviously, people have seen that prevention is now the new sort of first post in MedTech, and it's important to do so we can take the burden off the healthcare system. So diagnostics and screening, which is my, bread and butter for the last decade or whatever, is a great space that needs a lot of growth still, because there are some ancient technologies still sitting around in diagnostics and screening that need to be revamped, because we've just been doing the same old thing for a very, very long time. So I think go ahead and change that. I think most people would be pretty happy with that. And yeah, I don't know, I guess coming hand in hand with a solution. So a lot of people do things separately, but I think I'm seeing more technologies that incorporate a bit of everything. So they may have some hardware, some software, a therapeutic element, and some sort of pharmaceutical element too. What's one I'm missing? Digital health element. So it's just a bit of everything that ends up we're less siloed is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
keep your mind open and speak to people from different fields.
I guess one comment I just make on that as well is to be really careful of when you do sort of a capability push, so you know you've got the capability and you're trying to find a reason to use it, rather than finding the problem and then trying to work out how you can solve a problem. So this is a really good question, and I think there's so much technology, but we've sort of seen medical robots on and off for the last 10, 15 years. You know, you see automated manufacturing lines everywhere. I think surgical robots, it's been much slower because we've got the technology. It's just trying to find the best way to actually use it. So you have to be really careful, I think, when you come at it from a perspective of what's the new upcoming technology. I think blockchain's a good example of that. I think blockchain's got to be perfect for healthcare because the fact that it secures your data, I just don't know how anyone's going to, within the next sort of 10 years, really find a way to exploit it in a way that people feel comfortable with. Did anyone else want to add anything on that question? No.
Yeah, I think it's just to go back to kind of the use case. Like the use case has to make sense. Like, you know, there's lots of like cool technologies that, you know, people, wouldn't it be great if we can apply it to healthcare? But if the use case isn't there, like it's not going to work, you know. So it's really kind of going back to what is the need? Is it a real clinical unmet need? And can that technology be the right thing? Because sometimes some technology is just too expensive maybe for that particular area. And then it just doesn't make sense to try and kind of shove it into that. So I think just going back to that, but just in terms of like potentially, I think personalized medicine is really going to sort of, I think again, even in kind of like the aged care sector, that I think that's kind of ripe for disruption, and that can really link to kind of that digital health, data science space as well, and potential sort of automation. But but I think it has to kind of, sometimes it can be a bit dangerous to go with trends, I feel, because trends don't always last. Like they kind of, sometimes it's a bit of a boom and bust thing. Like some things that are in favor now might not be in the next 5 years, and usually takes 5 years to get any product to market. So yeah, I would be a bit cautious of that as well.
Yeah. One of the field I love is health informatics, and we have Apple Watches or all these sensors collecting all these data. Personally, I love being able to collect all that information. So I whether it's a great market long term, I don't know, but I think the more health data we collect on ourselves, the better I feel. Did you want to add something else, Dharmica?
I was just going to say, it all comes down to health economics at the end of the day. When we're going to bring something to market, we need to know that roadblock exists, and it's not going to get to market without understanding that.
Yeah, perfect. So we've got 3 more questions to go. I think we might just make it in time. So one question: I need investment but struggle to get in front of investors. What am I doing wrong? So what's the main reason for people not being invited in to see investors? Maybe Michelle, would you like to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. So I guess as a general rule of thumb with investors, look for warm introductions where possible. Lean on your mentors, your networks, accelerators, incubators, programs. They can be great resources, and that's a great part of being, involved in these programs. Many angel groups also have lots of, pitch applications online via platforms such as Gust. So I guess I'm tackling this question from do you know where to look, and then kind of how you can get in front of them. So you'd be surprised at the information that you can find online, and there are some great sort of open source databases. I know Airtree has got one, and there's been heaps of work in this space at the moment that identifies the various investors, what kind of fields they invest in, the stage, and where you can kind of look for more information. Pitch events and conferences can also offer pretty good exposure. So you've got Oz Biotech and Oz MedTech. They always have an investment sort of piece. Innovation Bay is doing quite a bit in this space, and they now have verticals as well. Startup Victoria and of the other various organisations within all the states around Australia. Pause Fest, those types of things usually will have a startup pitching forum where you can get in front of investors. One thing that I do want to note, because sometimes, a lot of the time, when we're speaking with startups, you need to understand how to do due diligence on investors to make sure that you're doing the right research and you're reaching out to the right people. So you've got to remember that VCs and angel investors receive hundreds of thousands of startup applications each year, and only a small percentage of these are being funded. So do you even fit within their investment mandate? Does your tech fit within their investment mandate? Are you the right stage? Are you the right jurisdiction, the right location? Is the timing of the fund okay? Like, has the fund already been allocated? So even if they wanted to invest in you, they can't really invest in you. So I guess I'd strongly recommend that you do your research to make sure that you're not wasting anybody's time and that you're approaching the right people, and then get warm introductions where possible.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Interestingly, I was at an event last Thursday. Someone gave me a business card with a QR code on and told me it was a pitch deck. I only had 48 hours. They gave me a password. I only had 48 hours. I could go on and have a look. And then he thinks that means that I'll get back in touch with him. I haven't done yet, but I did have a look because it's a bit of a quirky way of getting my attention. I said to him, whether the password did expire after 48 hours. I thought if I asked him again, I think he would have given me another password. But I'm not sure how many investors would have the time to react to something so quickly, but I'll always remember that one anyway. Did anyone have anything else to add to that question?
I think I've definitely echoed research your investors, because they're all quite different, and it's no point wasting your time with an investor that you're just not in the right sort of field, ballpark, quantum, etc. And I think it's probably kind of going back to sort of this, what the founder to CEO sort of conversation. It is often about crafting your message. So sometimes you should definitely try and test your messaging and how you're presenting your opportunity to the investors. And sometimes it can be actually a fantastic opportunity. It's just that the way that you've been presenting it, the story that you're telling, doesn't quite hit with what they're looking for. But maybe if you massage it slightly differently, then they get it a little bit better. So I think, but that's a bit of an art in terms of sometimes a good CEO can kind of craft that, especially for the right investors at the right time. But yeah, I think there's kind of that two parts, know your investors and craft your message. That works.
And I'll just add to the back of that you can learn so much from it. So you can even ask them, okay, you said no this time. What is it that you wanted to see? What's the missing piece? You can just take that. It's gold.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I think we've got one more question on there, but I feel like that's quite a big question, maybe not easy to answer in this forum. So I think we'll finish that here. And I just want to say again, thank you so much. I think, honestly, it's such a great ecosystem to be part of, and everyone's so lovely. And it's really good to talk to you all today. And I've learned lots as well. So I hope everyone watching today's learned a few bits of new information. Yeah, really appreciate it. Just for everyone watching, we'll put this up online. So if anyone wants to watch back or share it with friends or family or whoever, please do that and get the message out.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And yeah, Michelle, Dharmica.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Likewise.
Yeah.